Dimp Digital presents Idle Game Chat.
Cool.
Here we are then, back with a Fantasy Gaming League wrap-up show, season review, whatever you want to fucking call it. Joined by the now reigning, undisputed Fantasy Gaming League champion, Logan, to talk about the highs. There weren't really many lows for him, actually, throughout the season, but the highs of his record-breaking, record-setting season for Fantasy Gaming League of 2023. First of all, have you come down from the absolute highs that you've been no doubt feeling since the season officially closed?
Do you know what? I actually feel like there's more prestige in the FGL, not in the FGL, in the Grand Prix, because that is all you. That's it. And then you come to this, and you really, it's just in the hands of the gods.
It's management,
like
isn't it?
60% of it.
Same thing at work. People at the top end managing people get paid more. So it's one of those things. It's the way the world works. You can be in the gutters all you want, but it's the big wigs that take the titles overall.
No, it's good, obviously, to win it. It's something that I've been on the precipice of taking part in for a number of years and failed for various different reasons. So, yeah, it's a good one to get on the honours list.
Yep.
Tick it off. That's what Fergie did.
He did. He ticked it all off eventually, I think. Even that Club World Cup got ticked off eventually, even though that took a long old time. I think I missed that match playing football. Vidic got sent off, I remember.
The man, yeah.
Well, they aren't City doing that now. They're off doing that version of it.
They will be. I don't know when.
Yeah.
But I think I read Chelsea might be in it as well.
Oh, no, that's a different thing. That's a new...
Oh, is that a different thing?
Yeah, they're adding a new tournament, the Club World Cup, I think it's called. So, yeah, I mean, I don't know what FIFA... Well, we know what they're playing now. Extract more money.
More games. No time off.
Yeah, well, to be fair, they get paid enough. You should be working every week of the year, in my opinion.
More games than ever, they say.
Wow. More
Running them into the ground.
They deserve it, some of those players. Fucking divas. Anyway, let's run through the Grand Prix first, because we haven't got anyone to represent there. I thought, should I organise? I thought, I can't be arsed. It's too much hassle trying to get people arranged, as we found out in the quiz, which hasn't been published yet, but will be coming next week. It can be a disaster to try and do that. But the highlights of the quiz are that Paper ended up winning it with a score of 793. Biff was second with 780. Adcock was third with 780 and lost because, well, he got bumped down because he had more transfers than Biff. That's the first sort of tie break, if needed, that we use. Salmon on 778. Adkins on 765, but only 9 games. Hall with a full 10-game roster on 741 and a ridiculous amount of transfers. I mean, we could sit here and microanalyse every decision made there. It would take forever. But really, I don't put words in your mouth, but the story of this seemed to be Adkins blowing it. And then Paper just snuck in the back door, just got on with his job, did the basics right, and was able to profit from a mistake. Much like what happened to Biff when you got stung by a Football Manager touch all those years ago. You just got to be there sometimes to pick up the pieces.
Yeah, I mean, it's still quite something when the average on Adkins is still ridiculously it's like 87, isn't it? Is that right? I'm looking at it. Yeah, so it's 87, which is mad, and he's still lost. Didn't come bottom though, so that tells you how poor Paul's run was. But yeah, I mean, I think we've established he pretty much could have chosen any game that released this year, and he would have won. And he somehow contrived to choose the one game that. Probably the worst game of the year, you'd have to say.
That probably would have got a bad score and it got one. But
yeah,
it fucking sunk the whole company, so it definitely wasn't top tier. And just a bit of carelessness is anything I can put it down for.
Cockiness, some say.
Well,
There's no need to have that
arrogant
left.
Van
He could've
Dijk,
took
I'm
it-
hearing off Keane. So is this another version?
We could
of
have
this?
took the 5-point hit, subbed in anything and won. So
Yeah.
instead, he took the risk for no apparent reason.
Pig-headed. Is that one way?
Well, he got lucky with Baldur's Gate. Right? Let's not beat around the bush. He got lucky with that. So he'd used up basically his one life that he had, and then went for another one with the day before. I mean, I'm sure he had some sort of logic to it, but it seems like a risk that wasn't worth taking.
No, it definitely did. And in the end, as you said, Paper was able to profit there with a 7.93. Not the lowest score to ever win it. We've got a score from 2019, which is actually Biff's one, 7.45. Paper had previously won it with 6.26, but that was when there were less games required, so it's a slightly different format. But on the lower end of what we've had, we've had 8.12s, 8.07s from you, 7.97, so on the lower end, but still nowhere near Biff's disgraceful number that's got him over the line back in 2019. But Paper's team wasn't anything to write home about, but just got the job done. I suppose that's a lesson for people. Just get the basics right, and even if you chuck a shitter on there, like AEW Fight Forever, he's still able to walk away with the title.
I genuinely think, like, whenever I've tried to do teams, I think the main thing you want is to get a game out. Like, that's priority number one, is get all the games out. I've learned that over the years, that it's a vital thing to do. But I feel like the temptation all the time with it is to find that hidden gem, like to find the unexpected game. And really, if you go for a lot of the established titles and they come out, they're mostly getting around that 80 mark. I mean, look, if you look at Paper's score and he's won it with 7.93, you got to get 10 games with an average of 80 and you win.
Yeah.
That's what you got to do. So that is why I always set the benchmark at around 80. You want 85 ideally, but if you can get 80s all round, then you're laughing, gives you a bit of breathing room for subs.
Yeah, I mean, he only made one transfer, and that's to get rid of Homeworld 3, which I think he dumped in your team.
Yeah, he did.
To
Thanks,
kick things
James.
off, so that was a sub that had to be made. And he subbed in that AEW game at 65, so it was an all-round disaster transfer when you look at it that way, a 60 net score, but didn't need to do anything else. Everyone else just didn't have a great year. No, Adkins was on course to have a record-breaking year, believe it or not.
Yeah.
He had a chance to do it, and obviously that day before cost him dearly, but the rest of them didn't really offer much challenge. I mean, it was reasonably close with a 13-point delta between first and second and third. But there was still, every person seemed to get at least one or two low 70s game in there, if not a 60s game. And I think there'll be a lot of people looking in the mirror come Monday morning saying, if only we hadn't just picked one shit house and just done a high 70s a lot across the board, we would have had a chance to win. This will be the one that slipped away for a lot of them, I think.
It's been a ridiculous year as well. I think that's the point. It's been a good year for good games. I mean, Adcock will be kicking himself for having a red fall because
57. I mean, that's just an embarrassment.
If he gets an 80 in there, like
he's won it.
He's won it. So yeah, I mean, you look at it, as you say, Paper, AEW Fight Forever, he got around 60 on it, and then Salmon actually had a reasonable year. And then chucks in Tales of Symphonia remaster that gets him a 66.
Yep.
And Halls was just pathetic. I don't know what else to say.
No, it wasn't great.
Almost like he's done an Adcock and sabotaged himself to a certain extent.
Yeah, I mean, he got rid of... Here's the games he transferred out. Kerbal Space Program 2, Persona 4 Golden, Final Fantasy 7 Rebirth, Tempest Rising, Hollow Knight Silksong, Metal Slugs Tactic, and Counter-Strike 2. They were all the transfers that he had to make, and he cost himself 35 points. Even without that, he's still not really in range of winning it. So it's
I mean, the Jackbox Party Pack.
It's desperation, isn't it? It's
Mario where move it. It's just such a weird. I mean, some of them I can sort of go out. I can see where you're thinking, like Destiny Lightfall could have
should have done better.
should have done better. Detective Pikachu, I don't know, but yeah, it's just some stuff in there where you can almost sense there's just going to be no what are you doing that for? You just know. But anyway, I think he's acknowledged anyway. He's had an awful time of things, so
Yep.
he'll be hoping to do better next year, I assume. But Biff, I think, was I wouldn't say a tad unfortunate, but he had a pretty, he only did one sub, and he could have been in and around it with a few better scores.
Two 67s though will harpoon the side of your ship.
Can he afford to have two of them?
No. Can have one maybe, but you can't be getting away with two. Just circling back to Adkins, he had the two top scoring games, 96-96. The platform for success.
Not just that as well, though. He had bloody Spider-Man 2.
Yeah.
It's almost like the holy trinity of plus 90s guaranteed in the end. I mean, I think everyone said about Baldur's Gate, if it comes out, it'll score well. I think that was pretty much the thought. They didn't think it'd be 96, but it would have been around that sort of probably high 80s mark at the very least. So you got those three in there and you're going, well.
Yeah. That's the platform to build off, but just don't make silly errors. Don't slip over and let that bar in, because they'll come and sting you, and that'll be a Premier League gone. That'll be another opportunity for Adkins to get into the FGL Championship, which he's never done, gone for another year. And
unbelievable he's never been in there. He's not done it. You'd expect better with someone. I always think like Adcock and Adkins are pretty good with their gaming knowledge, right? They're normally the two that are up there in the quiz, and you kind of expect those two guys to pick. I don't know. It feels unfair saying pick better, because Adkins has picked well. Just one game not coming out has really cost him, and he's the only one with a game this year that didn't come out.
Yeah.
It's just sloppiness from him.
Yeah, I mean, there's enough games out there to get enough games to put on a list of 10.
Yeah.
It simply shouldn't happen, and it has happened. Some will claim he was unlucky because of the day before, but the writing was on the fucking wall that game in the summer.
Everyone said it.
Radio silence. It was never going to be happening, was it?
No. I'd have just gone, get out. Chucked in. Even like Modern Warfare 3, I'd have just gone, get in, it's coming out.
Yeah.
It'll be shit, probably 70 tops, but it'll be out, and that's all I need.
Yeah. Carelessness. Let's move into the FGL Championship, which is the main event. You versus Parky, and the curse continues. Still no one has been able to defend that belt. You go up to the FGL as the champion, you hold it for 1 year, and then the new challenger from the Grand Prix comes along and beats them. That's happened every single year that we've been doing that system, and it just continues here with Parky. You've got a record setting 859 points, though. What's interesting about Parky's score, 838, that is, 7 points higher than his last year's score where he won it. So it wasn't like he chucked it away this year. It's just that your team come along and set records, and we've done that city where they got 100 points and went, well, you ain't going to, it doesn't matter what you do, you can he beat us. And it's just one of those seasons, unfortunately, for Paul Parky.
Yeah. It's unfortunate, as you say, it's just unfortunate. I mean,
all-round nice guy, all-round good Egg Parky, now been sent to the doldrums of defeat.
I mean, the lowest score I got was 81, which is mad, really. I mean, the thing is, though, and I would say, it's like picking Starfield as your main. I don't think it was his main one.
I would have done it, though. That was his top pick.
It was, yeah. So I was always, my thoughts on that, and I won't keep bringing it up, but I think you want your pick to be like a 90-plus pick.
It should have been, Phil. We've told Phil off for this. He should have done it.
Yeah, it's never going to be there. But yeah, and then even his picks lower down, like 84, 80, and then 71. I mean, I'm not going to say he let it down, because Salmon's Company Heroes 3 was low, but that's really where it was. When you actually look at the scores that he got from his participants, they're really good. Yeah. Like, there's Salmon bringing it down a bit, but I got 81 from an Adcock. It's like, you'd have to say,
his average of his team members was better than the average of your team members. 88 versus 85. So you've used data there to square the blame right at Parky's doorstep, unfortunately for him.
Well, I'm not going to... I mean,
That's the stats saying it at last.
Because I think, that's basically, it's his games that's let it down. Because it's easy to point the finger in this at the fact, and I alluded at the beginning, the fact that it's in the lap of the gods. But, you know, you really need your games to come up trumps, and mine did. And as you say, Parky's didn't. But I think you're always...
Your average for picks
that.
was 88. His average for his picks were 80.
Yeah.
So it's all come undone, unfortunately. But I think it's difficult, those last 3 picks especially. When you had to transfer...
Well, it's in the lap of the gods.
Yeah, because you're left with whatever's left, and you're like, well... I mean, as I said, you had Suicide Squad in there. I mean, you're lucky that got delayed in some ways, because in terms of a high-scoring game, that may well have been
After I saw that fucking video, it was coming out.
Sweating.
No, well, it was coming out. It weren't... The two, and I think we said when we did the initial draft, those were the 2 games that were up for review, was Suicide Squad and Homeworld 3, and they both got fucking chopped. Fortunately, as you say, it takes the decision out of your hands when they're getting delayed. But
yeah,
when we saw that clip of Suicide Squad, I was like, good Lord, this is shite.
It wasn't even just that, just the reaction from everyone was like, I don't want this. And I was like, well, it doesn't matter if it's any good now. People have made their minds up.
Yeah, 100%. But yeah, you know, I think 2 subs is pretty good. It's more than you'd like, really.
Yeah.
But you know, you can't complain when you're getting an average of 87.
No.
The funny thing is, I've always said it that you want an average of 85. Like that's where you should be aiming, and you know, Parky's got that.
Yeah.
And yeah, as you say, unfortunately, still hasn't done enough to win. I think next year will be different. I really do.
You know, we always say it seems like a harder year, but I think that is true. There was a glut of games this year that just scored so highly, so it definitely made things somewhat easier. But you still got to identify the right games, because you can easily get like a Destiny 2 Lightfall. Didn't expect that level of 71's no disgrace, but you're banking on an 80 minimum there, and it didn't come in. But sort of read off the scores and the team. So you had 859, like I said. You had Legend of Zelda, Tears of the Kingdom, Star Wars, Jedi Survivor, Hogwarts Legacy, Resident Evil 4, Dead Space, Mortal Kombat 1, Fire Emblem Engage, Final Fantasy 16, Pikmin 4, Football Manager 2024. Parky had Starfield, Baldur's Gate 3, Super Mario RPG, Diablo 4, Spider-Man 2, Super Mario Bros. Wonder, Company of Heroes 3, Forza Motorsport, Kirby's Return to Dreamland Deluxe, and then Destiny Lightfall. Both 2 transfers each. As we said, you got rid of Suicide Squad and Homeworld. Parky got rid of Final Fantasy 7 Rebirth and Hollow Knight Silksong. And the interesting thing is, you look at the way the game or the release schedule happened, you got off to a fast start. You know, the first quarter you had 346 points in the bag. Parky, no disgrace, was sitting there on 229, so within range, no panic in there. 3 games versus 4. But in Q2, as we came up to the halfway mark, you had extended your lead to 614. He was on 317, so you'd opened up a real gap there. And I know for that point, Parky looks at that and thinks, this is going to be difficult to overcome. Doesn't matter what we do, he's setting such ridiculous scores. 88, 96, 84, 92, 89, 84, 81. And he's like, well, I've already got a 71 in my team because that Lightfall. And you're relying on mistakes. Do you think getting ahead out early does just make it more difficult for the challenger to respond? Because you don't want to respond unnecessarily, but if you're sitting there looking at that, you're like, well, we've got to do something in this case. I was just going to sleepwalk into a defeat.
I think I can understand you might just go, well, I'm just going to throw in the towel, because it ain't worth me worrying and thinking about it when that is an unassailable lead and I can't see anything out there that's going to improve on what I've already got. Like, it's a damage been done. Like, there might be that mentality, but I don't know. You know, everything, as you say, everything come out reasonably early for me, and I had points on the board, and I only really had 2. Well, you know, when I looked at the list, I thought I've only really got 2 decisions here. So I was kind of just waiting for it all to play out, really. It's, you know, I guess it can be demotivating. Like, when you look at City running away with it last year and you go, well, bloody hell, how'd you get close? That must be hard to go, come on, let's keep going at it. But I think, it's really difficult to lay any blame or say that did something wrong because it was still a really good year for Parky. I think you're right. It just, I got some good picks. The way it all landed up, I ended up getting some good games that scored well. And then it's all in the lap of the gods, really.
When you look at it, it's like a 21-point deficit. That's only 2 and a bit points per game. That is how fine the margins can be.
When the ones that I transferred in, so I transferred in Mortal Kombat 1.
Yep. And Pikmin 4.
And Pikmin 4. And Pikmin 4 gets an 88. So,
yep.
And an 84 is just even if I'd have left Homeworld 3 and Suicide Squad in, I'm not getting anything better than that. No, arguably. It's, my subs worked, everything. And I wasn't actually going to transfer in Mortal Kombat. I was going to transfer in something else, wasn't I? Can't remember what it was.
Yeah.
But yeah, I was looking at another game. It might have been Thingy Remastered. Dead Space Remastered? I don't know. I already had that. I can't remember. But anyway.
I'll look through and see if I can find it.
Yeah, I remember it not being particularly popular in the group. I wonder what that would have got me. I mean, I don't think it would have materially changed.
Interesting. Alan Wake 2 or Mortal Kombat 1. And so actually, Alan Wake 2 left on the table. Yeah.
Yeah. Interesting. So
89 that got, so
points left on the table.
To be fair, I don't comment. I just sit there and observe in those groups, make sure nothing untoward's going on. And when Pac-Man, I think it's Pac-Man that tabled Alan Wake 2, I was doing that, going, fucking don't go down that one, because that's going to be an absolute disaster. For some reason, I just thought it would be not that great, like low 80s tops, but absolutely took the championship and did very, very well. You'd basically posted Mortal Kombat 11 in there and said that's got an 89, so that's the sort of barometer there. And the last fucking game that Remedy released was Control, and that got an 83, so well within your rights to look at that and say, well, they're going to put it out the bag. Turns out they did, but it wouldn't have mattered anyway in the grand scheme of things, but it can fall on a knife edge. Little decisions like that. And actually, Pac-Man, who was criticised for tabling Alan Wake 2, really had sort of the inside track there.
Yeah, he did. I generally think if you had, I feel like Adcock is a prime horse, but he needs steering. I think if you had someone sometimes to steer him a little bit,
needs Frankie Dettori to be managing that horse. Can't just put any rookie on there.
Look, even when we're looking at that in hindsight, you're thinking, you're picking between two very high scoring games again.
Yeah.
So look, everything just fell into place quite nicely. I'm not expecting next year to be this kind of pace, to be honest. I think it is harder to, I kind of come into it, didn't really know what to expect and stuff with how it'd all play out, and it's gone well. But yeah, I don't know. I've just got a feeling next year is going to be a harder year for plus 80 games. Yeah,
I think if we get 296s again, that'll be a massive surprise. I don't see that happening, and that's those. Anything in the 90s is good, but when you get to like 94 and above, they're just
absurd,
fucking unicorns. So to get 2 of them in 1 year was absurd, and so many games that are around 88 and above 90 that there was a lot to choose from, and particularly when in the championship you've only got 20 games versus each other, 10v10, whereas that Grand Prix is harder because there's 60 unique games required across the whole field. So you're always going to tread on a landmine somewhere usually. But, next year I don't think it's going to offer that. I don't see there being many clear runners. I mean, I haven't really looked into it, but
there's nothing that I'm really aware of that's like
Zelda was the no-brainer if you could get it. It felt like that was the no-brainer. If you get that, you're off to a good start. And I would have backed Starfield, and I did throughout, and it didn't turn out that way. But even looking at that level, I'm like, I don't know. I really think next year will be a bit more of a pickle for people to navigate. So it'd be interesting to see how that pans out. Let's turn our heads forward to 2024. You'll be looking to defend the crown against Paper. Any words of any fighting words or goading you want to do just for Paper to try and rile him up, or any respect you want to pay to the young Toad?
Kind of just neutral, to be honest. He's gonna definitely be there trying to poke and prod. It's what he does, and just be a general irritant. But I think it'll be interesting because there is that. It's like Arsenal versus Spurs or Man United versus Liverpool. It's that kind of like, neither of us will want to lose that for obvious reasons, because it's going to haunt you for some time. But I think, my point would be is I think this year, to a certain extent, we're going to have to look for some gems. I don't think there's as many obvious games to choose from. Skull and Bones is now
it's on the table for people.
It's on the table, so that's there to be taken.
Suicide Squad to be on the table for those that want to roll the dice or go for that.
I need to have a proper look, but I'm not aware of anything. It's like, I think he's already said he'll let me have GTA 6. That could be the ultimate gamble, really. But I think it'll be good. It's in a weird kind of way, it's a good one to be involved with because it's a bit more lighter touch, generally speaking. You don't have a whole lot of worrying to do. You've got to get your own list together and whatnot. But I like the fact it's kind of like you get your games and then you just sort of sit on it and see what's what.
Yeah. It's going to be one of those years for sure, and it'll be interesting to see the ebbs and flows of that. Just some other stats. Like I mentioned, you set a new record of 859 in the FGL Championship, so you become the FGL champion. Paper's 793, doesn't set any records. Biff, Paper and Adcock obviously were on your team, so they pick up winners' medals for being on that team. Adkins was the MVP. He got 187 points, which was Baldur's Gate 3 and Spider-Man 2. That's a new record for any competitor to make on the team game. So he can pat himself on the back that he did well, I guess, in the team game, then just shit the bed in the Grand Prix. But 187 is a record that he previously had, was 183, and that's been there since 2018. So that's well done to him. Really, the only way he could have topped that is if he got Baldur's Gate and Zelda, but you're asking for a lot to get both of those in the team game. Got anything else here? Oh, Adkins. This is interesting. Since 2017, when the teams were formed, Adkins was on the winning team in 2017, 2018, 2019 and 2020. A 4-year streak, and he was the MVP in one of those. Now, since 2020, he's not won it. He's lost, been on the losing side for 3 years running. What's going on there? Biff's now on the 2 winning teams in 2022 and 2023. Is he the new hot product to pick up?
I really do think it depends on the composition of the rest of the team. Right. Because we've had, I'm not going to dig Salmon out because he's only recently started doing it, but I think last year was his first year. So he's kind of like feeling...
He was on the winning team last year.
Was he?
Yeah, he picked up a winner's medal. He was on Parky's team.
Oh, so this is where I start spouting shit. So my expectation was... So I remember him having a bit of a torrid time with it, trying to get to grips with it all.
He did have a bit of... But that's more in the Grand Prix where he was just doing a sabotage of his own... Because once you've set your list out, you don't need to redo much when you're in the team game. You've done it. You can offer advice, you can offer whatnot, but ultimately it's down to you, the captains, to make the choices. So you see people flounder so many times in that fucking Grand Prix where they're just left onto their own fucking whims to do what they need to do. And in the team game, as long as you do a solid job, you can be carried, essentially. I'm not saying he was carried, but he certainly didn't do enough to ruin that. So the Grand Prix scrambles can be misleading because you think, Christ, they don't know what they're doing, but they give you 2 solid games every year. Actually, they're probably a good team member to have.
Yeah. Well, even this year, you look at it and you go, how much of that can be attributed to Adkins on Park's team? You go, well, none of it, because he's setting records. So, I think he's just been a bit... it's just the way it goes. I think, most people I think this is where it becomes tricky, right? Most people, if they get, because you get the choice, right, to either pick the player or pick the game.
Yeah.
And I'd always pick the game because people can't be trusted. But I think if you chose the person, like the most likely one to choose first is Adkins. Then after that, you're left with a field of unpredictability in some ways.
Well, you have to remember nowadays, since last year actually, this was the first season we did it, the games that you get are the first 2 games or 3 games, if it's already gone, or even 4 games, that they get in their Grand Prix draft. So it's no longer defined. So basically, you get the same as what they get on their team. So their starting draft order in the Grand Prix is actually quite a big, swing, because they could be the first draft, in which case they're going to get their first game, then they're going to get their, what would it be, their 7th game, and then, at a minimum. Whereas if you get someone who's, say Adkins had an absolute nightmare and ended up being 6th in the draft order, his first game could be, his first 5 games could have already gone by the time you get there. So that now is a strategic wrinkle that you guys have to consider, is where they finished last year and where they're being drafted, because that can dictate the strength of the team.
Yeah, I think there's a couple. I mean, generally speaking, everyone's top games are largely okay. I mean, I think one thing that surprised me last year was how high up Homeworld 3 was on James's list. Like, there's a couple of bizarre things that get thrown out there. But this is why I think it's going to be even more interesting next year, because it doesn't feel like, again, going back to the amount of games that are available, it doesn't feel like there's this huge plethora of games to sort of bolster people's sort of top 10s. So it's going to, do you next year start thinking about, rather than choosing the game, do you choose the player? Because actually they're probably going to have the game anyway that you want. I don't know. I think it's, there's a lot of it is down to chance. I think that's just a simple reality of it. You sort of just, best educated guesses that you can take and just chuck it out there and hope that it works. And sometimes it does and sometimes it don't.
Yeah. It will all come to fruition very shortly as we run our draft episode very soon, and that'll be up in a couple of weeks at some point for you guys to listen to. Well, any final words at all before we get out of here for this season review?
No, not particularly. Just happy to have finally got into it and won it, because I think been close to it multiple times.
Yeah.
But it'd be nice to defend it and be it's always good to do first, right? It'd be good to win it and defend it. So that's the challenge for next year.
Yeah, you don't want to end up like that Stevie G, do you? Slipping over and blowing that Premier League and then never getting it.
Well, I've already got the title, so I'm fine with it. But it'd be
that's
nice
what I'm saying. You've avoided that. You've avoided the Stevie G syndrome.
And
finally
get on the precipice. And
for Adkins, the horror goes on, because there could be a chance where he never gets it. Could liquidate tomorrow this entire league. There's no Saudi backing of this finance. It's like, it could all just crumble and that'd be the end of it. And you'll forever have to look in the mirror at the day before and say, that was my Steven Gerrard slipper moment.
Yeah, very true.
Anyway, we'll be back early next year with Paper and Logan to do the draft itself. And it'll be interesting to see how it all pans out. But as usual, nothing more for us to say other than thanks for your time and ta-da.
This was a Dimp Digital production.